As time passes, we have people on the internet being born in later years interacting with older people, especially social media sites like TikTok, where the demographic being catered towards high school and college age users. And because a lot of the users are, let's say, 16 to 21, you get to see posts from their perspectives growing up. And someone like me who is 24, I'm just outside of that age range to where I can't relate to certain things. Even on Twitter, and I see posts of people younger than me, and at times you see tweets that show their age, but that is not in a negative connotation. So, where am I going with this? Since we have more 2010s kids on the internet, I just want to get things straight when it comes to older Gen Z and who is in it, because lately I've been seeing some wild takes. And that is due in part of people's years are getting younger and younger. I'm sure everyone is familiar with Gen Z by now. It is from the years ranging from 1997 to 2012. And we have the generation inside of the generation, which is the Zillenial, which is from 1997 to 2002. This is also the cusp range, which being a cusper between two generations is someone born the end or beginning of one generation, give or take 3 years. So I consider Zillenials to be young Gen Z. I would extend this invitation to those who are born in 96 and 03, but I'm going to get there. And I'm not gonna lie, this video is based off a tweet I saw, and no shade to the person, but it's just getting ridiculous out here. You just can't be throwing anybody and everybody into the young Gen Z category. And it is absolutely not going to be anybody born in 2005. But before that, let me talk to the older crowd first. Even though this video really isn't about them, they still need to be addressed. One thing I can confidently say is that Zillenials are not people born from 1994 to 1999. Because if you remember 9/11, that automatically separates you from Gen Z. It doesn't matter if you were in the 3rd grade. You still remembered. But I just should have known millennials were going to be insufferable. Because I remember they used to do that, oh, only 90s kids remember this. And it'll be like the most universal thing ever, like a VCR or a VHS. Things did not just magically stop December 31st, 1999. There are definitely character defining moments to those who grew up in the early 2000s. And I'm not just going to talk out my butt here. I think that guy who made the tweet was born in 03. And honestly, I really don't even know if he has a seat at the table, because some people might not even include your year. So let me get the foundation for my entire point of why the hard cutoff for young Gen Z is 2003 and not 2004 and later. So I have a brother who's born in 1996, and I have a sister who's born in 04. And I'm dead smack in the middle because I was born in 2000. Why is it that I can relate more to my brother than my sister when I'm still 4 years apart from both of them? The answer is technology. Because there was such an exponential growth of technology in the 2000s, it created the divide itself. And this is not just during your childhood, but also being a teenager as well. Technology really shaped how we grew up and what we experienced. Because the millennials grew up with the influence from the 90s. That's why I mentioned them earlier, because we are a lot closer to them than they want to admit. Early Gen Z was able to use some of the older technology, unlike the back half of this generation. Even the TV shows and media we consumed was different. In the early 2000s, you would regularly get reruns of older 90s shows, but in the mid to late 2000s, you really never saw reruns from the shows in the early 2000s like that. There are some pop culture or references that I would make to my sister, and she wouldn't know where they came from. And we lived in the same house, so I came up with a benchmarker thing so you could see the difference between older Gen Z and everyone else. Now, I will say that this will matter if you were the oldest sibling or the youngest sibling, because you would have been introduced to certain things by your older sibling that you might not would have. This is why I extend that invitation to 96 and 03. An example of this is my baby sister who was born in 2006, and she didn't know anything about the original Teen Titans when Teen Titans Go came out, and I had to introduce that to her. I don't know when she would have figured that out. I remember I was a senior in high school and the freshmen on the team didn't know any of the shows from the 2000s. I'm talking about the Jonas Brothers and they like some who? Why are we having this conversation right now? I was just mind blown. Or like my old coworkers who were born in 03, not getting all my references, or our experiences would just be a little bit different. I would be referring a Drake and Josh joke or an old iOS game, and they would get it some of the times. And it's like, I just couldn't fully wrap my head around that because it is only a 3-year gap. And sometimes they will even joke about our gap, quote unquote. But the reason why I'm even letting them slide in the Zillenial group is because they can kind of hang with us, and definitely not 04 and 05. Them niggas can't hang at all. Like, I seen it firsthand in college. I was like, oh, y'all a different breed. But anyways, to my benchmarkers, because there needs to be something consistent and concrete to go off of. This is going to be universal and not just my personal opinion. So here they go. Do you remember when the Nintendo Wii came out? Do you remember No Child Left Behind or Accelerated Reader? Do you remember the 2008 recession? Do you remember when the first iPhone came out? Because if you answer no to the majority of these questions, baby, you got your answer right there. You are not older Gen Z. And my personal litmus test would always be to ask someone younger than me about Zoe 101, because literally 80% of the time they haven't seen the show or don't like the show. There was a tweet not too long ago about Zoe 101 and Victorious and them, and basically they just got called out for being too young. Because if you were there, you would know how good Zoe 101 is. Anyways, let's move on. This divide, quote unquote, did not just affect our childhood, but also going into your preteen and teen years. For example, social media in the early days of the internet. I was very young when that came out. I didn't really have social media like that until I was 14, 15. But somebody who was born in 05 would have had that social media when they were kind of on a bigger kid scale. So like 8, 9, 10 or whatever. I mean, even the TV shows and movies. Going back to that example, I remember when YouTube was new. My first ever video was like a Pokemon Sapphire and Michael Jackson video or something. I'm gonna have to find it for y'all. Somebody who's not older Gen Z probably doesn't remember YouTube being new. It was kind of there when they were coming of age. I remember playing games on CartoonNetwork.com and Disney.com, or even movies like Shrek and Kung Fu Panda when they first came out. We loved that growing up. And you really just had to be there for the Shrek Cups at McDonald's, or the historic run DreamWorks went on to compete with Pixar. And all the movies that went straight to games, like Why Is Ratatouille on Game Boy Advance SP and the Xbox 360. Even seeing gaming evolve, granted I'm still kind of young when it comes to that spectrum, but I remember buying TV games, turning it to channel 3 and hooking up my composite cables. I remember me and my brother had this 2-player dirt bike game and this Avatar The Last Airbender game. Super fun, by the way. Going back to social media, it was just Facebook, MySpace with a dash of Tumblr and Twitter. Granted, MySpace was a little bit before my time. Instagram wasn't around until I was in like middle school. I didn't grow up with social media in my preteens. There was no internet influencers. Smartphones didn't become the standard until 2013 and iPhones until 2015. I vividly remember having a phone with minutes on it. People outside of older Gen Z, Instagram, by the time they got in middle school, Instagram was already popping. Snapchat was already popping. All that stuff kind of came later into my teenage years. I still had data and limited data in 2017. So I really could have imagined TikTok being around when I was in the 8th grade. I mean, Instagram didn't even have videos until Vine came out. Like, do you remember what memes used to look like in 2012? I just couldn't imagine playing Fortnite in middle school instead of Black Ops 2. That's when I knew the tide had shifted, when people was like, oh, Prime Fort better than Black Ops 2. I'm like, we can even talk about the music. 2000s music, I could feel it coursing through my veins sometimes. It just reminds me of being in the 3rd grade. And that's another thing, when I would see a comment like, oh, do you remember listening to this song? I remember this song came out when I was in the 2nd grade. And I'm like, 2nd grade? I was in the 7th grade. And that applies to like old Drake songs. I'm like, what do you mean you was in 1st grade when Take Care came out? Like, I can't even wrap my head around that sometimes. This is when I knew people on the internet were just getting younger and younger. We even have these social cues. Even though that it may be a 2 to 3 year difference, technology made it seem like 4 to 5. This is why I say you can't just lump us all together. This is why there needs to be a group within a group. So I really don't know what to tell the folks born from like 04 to 06, because I have recognized that y'all aren't like the back half of Gen Z, but y'all are definitely not like the front half. You'll just have to be the middle child. Now, I'm not going to say that everything I mentioned here is exclusive to older Gen Z, because I know this is more of a gray area. I'm sure someone born in 05 did some of the things I did. This was more of a generalization. Just don't beat me up because you did or didn't do some of the things I mentioned. The line had to be drawn somewhere. I'm just laying down a few ground rules so we can have something to defer to later. I just wanted to make sure that everyone knew what older Gen Z and Zillenials are. This video is also me not telling you that your childhood sucked because you didn't do this and I did. Personally, I think everyone should say they had the best childhood. But now that we have another generation coming of age onto the internet, it's just weird to me, because I'm used to being the younger group of kids online. And now we have people born in 2010 on Twitter and 11-year-olds on TikTok. Like, I've seen people fantasizing about being a teenager in 2016. And I'm just at a loss for words, because I remember doing that to the people who were teenagers in 2012 or 11. It's just weird to me because younger people didn't experience the things that I did, because A, they weren't born, or B, they were in diapers. And this is the same thing when older people on the internet will be frustrated at us because we didn't know Justin Timberlake was in NSYNC. And now we are the older people on the internet being frustrated at the younger people because they didn't know Harry Styles was in One Direction. Time is just a flat circle, really. And I'm sure kids in 10 years will be making videos like this, so the cycle really just continues. If you wanna play, come and play today. Let's just scare it away. Yeah, I will make you see all of the things that you can be. Believe in yourself with all of me. Yeah, yeah.